Hi, Heart Nation. Welcome to another edition of Carla's channel, Heart to Heart Inspiration. And today is February 2nd,
That's right.
2025. And it is the second day of Black History Month, the starting of Black History Month, how we officially celebrate it. But, because Black history is America's history, it's celebrated 365 days out of the year.
24/7.
That's right. Today, my guest is Queen Suga. Queen Suga. And Queen Suga is an affectionate term that we like to use and to describe someone of affection. So you may hear different terms, and I'm gonna say in the Black family, you might hear Queen Suga, you might hear Nana, you might hear Medea, all types of things like that. So today I have Queen Suga on as my guest, and we are live in the studio together. And for today's edition of this podcast episode, we are talking about Black excellence, the unfiltered voices that inspire our culture and our history. So I don't know about you, but there's been a lot of movies lately about Black history, the different achievements that some of our people before us have contributed to America's history. But before we get into that, I want to ask the audience, for you all out there, do you have any real life stories of Black history, the Black History Revolution and things like that? I don't know if you do or not, but today's your day and you have a special treat, and you're going to hear some of those stories today from both of us. Real life stories, and then stories that were handed down to me from within my family. So, Queen Suga, would you want to just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, who you are?
Yes, I can start off. I can say that I know that there are a lot of stories about Black history and struggles of Black people, especially that happened in the South, or some of our, siblings or family members that grew up in the South. However, I myself was born and raised in Chicago on the South Side.
Woo-hoo.
And South Side, but there are or were some struggles, and currently still are, people in the North for Black history and struggles down through the years. So today, I guess I'll be sharing some of those stories from you, from the heart of Chicago, or people in the North of the
Yes.
Mason-Dixon line.
Oh, wow. You know what? I really like that. I like how you made the distinction between the North and the South, because that's an important piece, because a lot of times we may hear or see stories in the news or in movies about the South, but we really don't hear about the North, maybe not as much, because many of the people from the South moved to the North,
Right.
to get away from Jim Crow laws and things like that. But I'm glad that you said that. And for those who don't know a lot about Chicago, yes, it's a great city. It's a beautiful city. We have the lakefront, and we've traveled a lot of places. And we've often said we haven't seen a city as beautiful as Chicago skyline.
That's right.
It's very beautiful, but Chicago is also very segregated as well. So you have your Chinatown, you have the Russian side, you have Polish, you have Hispanic, you have Black, you have white. So there is a lot of segregation in Chicago, but we can't break it all down in this time that we have, but we're going to just give you some nuggets. I love hearing the stories from people in previous generations, older people. I love the stories. I absolutely do. So, with no further ado, Queen Suga. So, you grew up in Chicago, and let's start off with your grammar school, elementary school times, and anything that you want to talk about that's significant during your elementary school times.
Absolutely. The elementary school or grammar school that is commonly known by older people. In that time, I attended William Whittington Carter Elementary School on the south side of Chicago. It was a very large, beautiful school. I will say that. And during Black History, we heard stories and saw pictures of a lot of Black heroes, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, and all of those great people. However, I did not realize that when I was in the sixth grade, I had a personal, had occasion to be in the presence of a great Black history leader, a great, strong, very Black, strong Black woman named Mamie Mobley. Her
Mamie
name,
Mobley.
yes, her name was Mobley at that time, but she had currently married Mr. Mobley, but was previously married to Mr. Till. And she was my grade school teacher in the sixth grade, and she was the mother of Emmett Till.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, when I was in the sixth grade, we were in the sixth grade, I had never heard of the story about Emmett Till and his murder in Mississippi until Mrs. Mobley told her students, my classroom, that story one day during a school session.
Wow.
And that was very eye opening for me. And it just stirred up a lot of different feelings within myself that something like that had really happened and that this woman had lived through that.
Wow.
And was able to sit there and tell us that story.
So how did she tell it? How did it come about?
Well, she was sitting at her desk. At that time, we all had our desks. The teacher sat at the front of the classroom, and the students, we had individual little desks that sat in front of her. And so she was sitting at her desk. She was a very nice, just warm woman, really. You
Okay.
couldn't ask for a better, compassionate teacher than her. And she was sitting at her desk like she often did. And a lot of times, the teachers would just sit back and they would tell us different stories while they gave us instructions on our schoolwork. Mm-hmm. And so at this particular time, she mentioned that she had had a son, Emmett Till, who had went down south to Mississippi for the summer to stay with some of her relatives during the summer vacation. And that during that time that he had been murdered.
Wow.
By some people, that a white woman had said that he had whistled at her. Now, she did not believe that that had happened because she told us that her son stuttered and that he would not have been able to whistle.
Wow, really?
Yeah, that was what she told us.
I don't even know if that's in the history books, or I know there was just recently a movie about Emmett Till's death and the events that happened. And I honestly I haven't looked at those, maybe one of them, because sometimes it's just a little bit painful to look at. But I'm going to have to see if that's in there. So that's a very interesting fact, a very fact that I would consider unfiltered, that may not have come through, but go on with your story. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, that's fine. So she told us this story, and needless to say, we were all just awestruck by it. Now, this was during the time, as far as I was concerned, it was not in the newspaper, or it was in the newspaper, but, during that time, young people did not, really
You were in
have
sixth
access.
grade.
Yes, I was in sixth grade.
Were you all reading the newspaper? Maybe
No.
these days young people are
Right.
reading the newspaper, but in that time,
Right. Everything's on the internet and that kind of thing now. But during that time, we didn't have access to that type of information. And really, during that time, a lot of information was filtered by our parents. We didn't have access to a lot of things. For example, if grown people were talking, we were not allowed to speak or anything like that. We had to wait. So maybe that's why I had never heard this story before.
And that was kind of a gruesome story, the murder and how he was murdered. So I could see that being held from you all not to hear that. Okay.
Right. But the thing that I do want that impressed me a lot was that she was able to tell us this story, and that she was such a kind woman. And one of the things that I remember about her is at the end of the school year, her and her husband, Mr. Mobley, hosted a end of the school year party for us at their home. So they all, they picked us up, took us to their home,
Wow.
and we had this party at their house. And that stands out to me because they had to really be strong people for her to even be a school teacher after this horrible thing had happened to her only son, and then to host us in her home. But they were really nice people. So that's one of the things that really stands out to me, and I just think that she was a outstanding model of Black strength.
Wow. That is awesome. Really, that story, to hear you say that you actually had, interaction with her and things like that, because a lot of times when I'm looking at different films and movies, it seems like they're so far removed, from me. And so I'm glad that you shared that. Thank you for sharing that. And again, such an inspiring story, that her strength, because people may say, how is this an inspiring story? Because you're talking about her strength, her resilience that she had. Can you imagine the frame of mind that she was in when this happened? And then all the things that she did for him to try to fight for justice for him. And in the face of all of that, still was a school teacher, teaching children the same age as her son, and reminding her every day of his absence. But maybe that was part of the passion that fueled her as well.
Maybe.
But that's a great story of resilience. And I really like that story. So, and I know that during grammar school, were there any other stories? I don't know, for elementary school, anything else that you can think of?
Well, not really through elementary school, but I do remember, if I can.
Yes, I love it.
When I was in high school, I did attend the very famous or well-renowned Englewood High School at that time. This was before the school was rebuilt. Now they have a new building, very modern. But at that time, it was a old school. It was still very beautiful. It was such a large school, and it had what is known as the towers built onto that school, and that was a famous part. One interesting fact is that my grandmother had actually attended Englewood High School.
Wow.
In her youth. And at that time, she had showed me, before she had showed me her yearbook. And surprisingly enough, she was one of maybe 2 or 3 Black students that attended Englewood High School at that time.
Wow. So Englewood, for all of you all who may not know, Englewood in Chicago is predominantly Black right now. Probably maybe have been all Black when you went there.
Yes.
But when your grandmother went there, she was only the 2nd or 3rd Black student there, and all the rest were white.
Right.
Wow. Wow, how times change. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. So my grandmother also was a great inspiration to me as well. She always tried to expose us to appropriate things, table manners, which everybody did, and take us out to eat, every now and then. Because
table manners, you mean like what? Not eating at the table with your elbows on the table, or not burping at the table? My kids do that. They have these burping contests, and I'm mortified when we're out in public. Table manners.
Right, table manners. She was a firm believer that whatever you did at home, you would do out in public. So we really had to be cognizant of that. Also, another thing that she used to do would be like for once a month, she would take me out to a place to eat to exhibit those table manners that I was being taught at home. Now, during that time, it wasn't very many places that in our neighborhood that you went out to eat at. Matter of fact, I think where we went was to the Chicken Shack down like on 51st in Indiana. And also there was a Chinese restaurant, maybe about 4 or 5 blocks from where we lived, the Rumpus Room. And that was a very, I want to say, semi-formal place where you went. They would bring the teapots out with the tea and that type of thing. Okay. So that was a special time. And I also have to also mention that it was a lot of strong Black people in my life, role models, one of which was my grandmother, my mother, my father, and my aunts, of course. Not to leave anybody out, but our entire family tried to portray that to us. But as I was saying, that when I was in high school, that was when I remember where I'm Black and I'm proud. I remember that motto came out, okay? And that was the thing or the time that people started wearing the afro. Because during that time, everybody had their hair straightened or, curl, perm, that type of thing. And when you got your hair washed, you didn't go outside. You waited till you got your hair done. But the afro came out, and I was one of which who had a huge natural. And we had those afro pics. All right now. And so it came out. I'm Black and I'm proud. And we had a lot of cultural events and performances that would come to our school during that time. And so we started to learn about our history and some of our great heroes. Wow. That were during that time.
So that was the Black Revolution. And were you a part of that revolution, or anybody in your family, or what are some memorable moments about the Black Revolution during that time?
One of the things about that time was that at our school, the Black Panthers group emerged, and some of the young men from our school were a part of that group, one of which was my cousin, Spurgeon Jake Winters, and might have heard or seen about him in some of the movies about Black Panthers. But let me tell you one thing about the Black Panthers. Those were some of the elite in my eyes. They were very intelligent and very just smart, in educational subjects and that type of thing. So that's when that kind of emerged, and a little bit of the Black militancy that people speak about.
So I like that you said they were very smart.
Yes.
What are some of the things that stood out to you that they did, that they promoted and sponsored, that made you, confirm that they were smart, or really let you know they were elite and they were different? Because a lot of times the TV tries to portray them, certain movies. There was a very good one that just came out recently that had portrayed them in a better light, and really showed how the FBI had really dispelling what they've been saying happened, with the shootout that occurred with the Black Panthers in Chicago. But what are from your point of view, what are some of the things that stood out to you that they did to put them on that elite list for you?
Well, a lot of them, most of them were in honors classes in the high school. So that's one thing. So they weren't just average. So that set them apart as far as intelligence. They spearheaded breakfast programs within the community. They advocated for speaking up for rights, for our civil rights, that type of thing.
Wow. That's so good, because I'm glad you're sharing this. This is a part of that unfiltered, story that we're talking about. Things that may not always get portrayed in the film and movies, that they were in these honor classes, the things that they were doing. They were smart. They were not just gang members.
No.
They were not thugs.
No.
No matter how the media, the politics at that time tried to portray them, you're saying there was a different side.
Yeah, they were just advocates. They were just advocates for Black people.
Wow. I like
That's
that.
all it was.
When you heard about the shootout of the Black Panthers, or did you hear about it? What was going on at that time? What was your account of that?
Well, for the account of the shootout that occurred. Actually, it was in the area of where I mentioned previously where the rumpus room was.
Okay.
So I heard that there was a shootout that was going on there, which, like I said, wasn't far from our house.
Mm.
So, that was it. I just heard that, like I said, they were trying to speak up and be advocates for Black people's rights. And we know that sometimes just trying to be an advocate and give your people a voice, or a voice for yourselves, for equality, those type of things don't sometimes sit well with, I just want to say, the establishment, or
Right.
with established organizations.
So true. So true. That they were just trying to speak up and give, people a voice, just like today, like what happens today, the Black community, Black Lives Matter. No matter what you think of the organization personally, I believe it's the same type of premise, just trying to be a voice and an avenue.
Right.
So that was high school. What other kind of things were going on in your high school during that time? It's the Black Revolution. Now, they may not have been a part of the games and things talking about the Black Panthers, but what was the climate like in your school? And during that time when you're in high school, was that during the time of the riots or no? Or I'm not getting ahead of myself.
The riots were a little bit after high school, or right after, or right before I was graduating. So with the riots that occurred, after Dr. Martin Luther King's assassination, there was some rioting within the city, mostly on the west side, as I believe it, not on the south side. However, the National Guard had been called in, and we had heard that they were stationed over in Washington Park, which wasn't too far from my house. So me and some of my friends, we walked over to Washington Park, and the sight that I saw really frightened me, because there they had tanks, and all of these military artillery. There were servicemen sitting all around the park. You may not be familiar with Washington Park in Chicago, but it's a very huge, beautiful park, open area. And so the servicemen were there cleaning their rifles and artillery. The Jeeps were there with those, I don't know what they call them, that arm that shoots the cannonballs or whatever comes out of it, and all of that. And so for me, that was very frightening. I'm a young woman, but to think that they could actually come in our living area and release this type of wartime artillery on us,
on everyday people,
just
sitting
non-military people, just ordinary people, was very frightening to me.
Wow, that is so. It just sounds scary. It's such a powerful statement. And you all were scared. Many times now we're hearing about curfews and things. Was that a part of that as well?
Yes, we did have a curfew. We were not allowed to be out on the street after dark. I think it was something maybe like around 6 p.m. We had to be in the house.
Or what would happen?
Well, probably some of those artillery or some type of punishment was going to happen. Maybe no one would see you again. I don't know. Wow. In my area, we obeyed the curfew. Yeah, so I don't know what else. Might have happened.
Wow, I know that was scary.
Yes.
But on one hand, you can see, you see them in the movies and the films, right? We see that there were a lot of rioting going on, businesses destroyed. So I guess on one hand, could you see where they were coming from? Did you see this on TV yourself? I don't know how it was living during this time, if TV was limited for you? Did you see it? Did you hear about it? Did you even have a clue what was going on elsewhere and why they were doing it?
Well, I had heard that there was some rioting, and I had heard that. But TV during that time, we really didn't have that many televisions like you do now. Every kid has two in their bedroom, computers, that type of thing. We didn't have that. And if you did watch TV, you only watched it during certain hours and only certain things you could see. So I had heard of it, but I knew that it was wrong, so to speak, that people should not be rioting and looting. I did know that. But beyond that, I really didn't know. I see where they were coming from. I knew that this is like what is known as civil unrest and that it does have to be stopped.
Okay.
But I think it was a little bit over the top to have all of that there. It was just very frightening on ordinary people. But
Right.
I guess to bring order, I guess it definitely would scare you into, being compliant with the law or, different rules of the land at that time. But to actually see it in my neighborhood where I could just walk to it was very frightening to me as a young person.
I can only imagine. Now, I'm just going to just interject a little bit. Years later, when Obama was elected and I had a chance to go to his inauguration, as we were walking outside, they had the Secret Service men and they had those rifles and things, AKs, I don't know the proper name for them, but I mean, they were out there. When they told you to move, you moved. Yes. And it was scary then, and they were on top of the buildings and everything, and they were not playing. So I couldn't imagine seeing, and we expected something because the president-elect was there. That's when he spoke in Chicago and Hyde Park. But I said for the inauguration, but I mixed two things up. That was not for the Washington, when we went to Washington. That was actually when he was speaking here in Chicago when he won it, and he spoke at Hyde Park and the Millennium Park area. So that was scary to me during that time. I couldn't imagine living with that and going on with that. So you said your grandmother, your mother, your dad, they were all very strong people to instill in you, of course, right and wrong, but also a voice of equality, knowing that you are Black. This is the revolution, but also, did your parents also have some sort of, if you are approached, today we give the talk to many of our Black children, you don't talk back to police and things like that. You keep your hands where you can see them. Was there any type of that when you were growing up?
Oh yeah, you didn't want to talk back to figures of authority, which kind of went hand in hand with they were our figures of authority and we didn't talk back to them either. So it just kind of carried on, but it was strictly enforced if you were approached by the police or any other civil authority figures. You did not talk back. You were to just try to comply and live through that situation and be able to live and tell about it another day.
Which you are doing.
Yeah.
You are telling us about it. I have truly enjoyed our time. We are actually at the top of the hour. I think we got to have you on again because there's so much more that I want to hear about, as we talked a little bit before, just about you. You are a nurse.
I am.
And some of the things that you did as part of your voice for equality. As a nurse, and some of the things that you did. You held a sit-in at your college.
Oh, yes, I did. I had almost forgotten about that. Yes.
Yeah, so there's so much more to this awesome nurse. You had a lot of Black figures. What does it mean to you, as we close up, to be a Black nurse today, from where you started from? And I'm going to have another section on healthcare in Black America and America. So, because there's two distinctions with being Black with a health crisis in America and in Black America. And that's going to be coming up later in this month. But As we close out, I love being a nurse. How about you? What does it mean to you to be a nurse?
I absolutely love being a nurse. That was one of my dreams, and I'm so happy that I was able to accomplish it. And I hope you do have me come back because I have a really funny story about how I became a nurse. I had no idea how to become one, I just knew that I wanted to be one.
Okay.
So I hope you have me come back and I can tell you a little bit more about that. But I'm very proud. It's one of the things that I truly enjoy doing, helping others and being an advocate for others. So
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Heart Nation. Thank you, Ryan, for chiming in and our other guests. And if you have more comments, please put them there. And this is a shameless plug for nursing. If you're thinking about becoming a nurse but don't know where to start, DM me and let me know, and we can help you out. But also, we want you to have a great week, a safe week. Celebrate, listen to those voices, Black voices. Share those stories with us. Put some comments in there, okay? And like and subscribe and share the channel. Until next week, we will talk to you soon. Take care, Heart Nation.